Hello friends, welcome to today's video. So today we'll be discussing on an important topic which is the TRIPS. It is very important in the times of COVID-19 pandemic. So starting with first to understand the TRIPS, first we need to understand the intellectual property. What actually is an intellectual property and what are the rights that are given under it. So IP rights are nothing but the rights that are given to a person over the creation of their minds. Let's say you have created a product or you have designed a product, then you are having all the rights to use that product, and that product is exclusive to you. So that is what it gives. It gives the creator an exclusive right over the use of his or his creation. So if anybody want to use your product, then they have to purchase a license or they have to take your permission before they use it. So that is what IP rights give you. And also one more important thing which they give is like you will be having your exclusive right over a certain period of time. Like many of the organizations also, like let's say company like Intel, they will be manufacturing the CPUs, desktops, and like many things. So any product which they manufacture, so that company will own the IP rights for that product. Okay, next. So now we'll move ahead to TRIPS. So just now we heard about the intellectual property rights, which is the IPR. So the TRIPS is nothing but all the trade related aspects of the intellectual property rights is nothing but the TRIPS. The expansion of TRIPS is trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. So what does it do? It does. So under the TRIPS agreement, it sets the standards for the intellectual property protection in the world. So what it does is, if at all, if any person want to use any intellectual property of some other company or a person, then this TRIPS agreement will give some protection to it, like in terms of legal framework. So it does that with the help of certain standards which it has set. So now when this TRIPS came into force, it came into force on 1st January 1995. And like all the members of the WTO, which is the World Trade Organizations, are a part of this TRIPS agreement. So here the members are nothing but the countries. So currently 140 countries are there in the WTO. So all these countries are a part of this TRIPS agreement. Next. So just now we have said that TRIPS is certain standards. So what are those? So it sets certain standards in terms of the copyright and the related rights, certain trademarks, and some standards are there which are specific to the geographical indications, and like just as I said, any industrial designs which are there, so those are also under part of IP, and it also gives the patents and layout designs of integrated circuits and protection of undisclosed information. So this is important. So whenever a company is giving its IP rights to somebody, then it has to sign an undisclosure document. So all these are some of the standards which this TRIPS discusses. Next. So why are we discussing the TRIPS in the time of COVID-19? Since we have said that the TRIPS sets the minimum standards in the international rules governing the patents, including on medicines. So COVID-19 vaccine, if you know, it is a type of medicine. So since this vaccine is manufactured by many countries and many organizations, so all these vaccines and all these products are having a certain standard and they are being patented by those organizations. So all these are a part of the TRIPS agreement. So what happens is, so this under the TRIPS agreement, all these organizations have been given the patents for a, normally they are given for a minimum of 20 years period. So what they are giving is like the patents are given for the product and well as for the process. So product is like a vaccine and process is like what are the steps that are needed in the manufacturing of vaccine and other important things. And also one more thing which related to medicine, this TRIPS is covering like any pharmaceutical data has to be protected against the fair use. Let's say a company is doing some trial runs on the vaccine, then the pharmaceutical data will also has to be protected under this case. So this data should not be shared. So these type of standards and the protections are given by TRIPS in relation to the medicines. So now many countries are now asking for this agreement waiver so that all the patents can be given for free. So what it does is like so what the countries are saying, countries like India and South Africa and many other are there which are developing countries, what they're saying is like if you know the COVID-19 vaccines are being developed by very few companies. Some of them are like AstraZeneca, the Pfizer, the Moderna. So these are some of the few companies which are having the COVID-19 vaccines. So like they will create a monopoly. So what happens is, and these vaccines, so these organizations have patents over these vaccines. So if at all somebody wants to take those vaccines, then they have to pay certain amount of cost. So what happens is because of these patents, it will increase the uncertainty and also the cost of the product and also the keeping the delay competition and keep the prices high for low income countries. These prices are high because these companies are investing much money into R&D. So whenever somebody is purchasing those products, then the price is generally high. And also like manufacturing know how test data cell lines are needed. So what happens is if at all some other company want to manufacture the vaccines, then they need some data as to how this production is. So this is nothing but a process. So what are process a company needs to follow for developing a certain vaccine is unknown to the people who don't have these vaccines. So, and also one more reason what the countries are saying is like under the TRIPS waiver, they are saying the COVID-19 vaccines have been developed by these organizations like Oxford, AstraZeneca, Pfizer and all. But then it's not only the money of the company. Many government and public funding have also been received before the vaccines were developed. So they have given some advance payment to them. So it's not that only solely that these organizations were able to develop these vaccines. There was a public funding and the collective efforts were made. So these IP rights have to be lifted is what this demand is. And also what happens is if there's a monopoly, as I've just said, since if these few organizations hold this monopoly, then in the time of pandemic where many lives are lost and like the time is very crucial. So all the people have to be vaccinated on a timely basis. So if the IP rights can be waived off, then in that case other countries can also produce the vaccines. So that is what these countries are demanding. And one more reason what they are saying is like these patent rules prevent the poor countries from producing the vaccines locally. So as we have just said, these rules are preventing. So these are under the legal framework. So once there is a waiver on this, that means legally they will be free to use the products and the processes. So these are some of the justification given by the countries for this TRIPS waiver. Okay. Now the people or the countries who are actually are against this waiver are what they are saying is like they are saying even if the IP rights are waived off, then what happens is since these vaccines are developed by the developing countries and it is with the developing countries like USA, UK. So even if these countries are given to the developing countries like India or South Africa, then what will happen is they are saying that they will not be able to produce these COVID-19 technologies without the technology transfer. So what the developed countries are saying, or these companies like AstraZeneca and all these are saying are like even if we give a IP waiver, then the developing countries like South Africa, they don't have the technology or the necessary infrastructure to be able to produce this world-class vaccines. So this is one of the reasons which these companies are giving that they don't want to have a waiver on these IP rights. And one more reason which they are giving is like the pharma companies are saying that they have invested heavily, like so much money has been put into development of these vaccines under the R&D. So all the cost that they have invested, so they can recover that cost only by selling the vaccines. So that is the reason they don't want these IP rights to be waived off. Another reason what they are saying is like if these waivers are given, then it will not, it will discourage the innovation and R&D, because these are given for free, then nobody will want to innovate, and this will also lead to the discouragement of the R&D. So these are some of the reasons for which the countries are saying that they don't want this waiver to happen, and the developing countries are saying to have a waiver. So now only time will tell as to what will the WTO will decide, and all the 140 members will decide on this waiver. So if you have liked the video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more amazing videos.